Here we are, emergency podcast, Tressway extended. We're here to talk it all, break the whole thing down. We are here to get to it. It's obviously the most important sports headline, certainly the most exciting sports headline we've been a part of in the last few hours. We'll get to that. But we're starting. Obviously, it's a joke. Starting off on a more somber note. Pop, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. You once called Trustway the greatest Redskins slash commander of your lifetime. So,
Pound for pound, if you really do the math and you weigh all positions equally, there's been nobody like him.
well, as great as Trustway is, I did want to give a shout out to a Redskins great and legend, Sonny Jurgensen. So, Sonny's one of the few players that was actually before my time, but I'm sure if Uncle Nick is watching this, my older brother was Sonny played during his time and just a legend. And the great thing about him was he continued on with the team as a broadcaster. And, you wouldn't even be able to relate to this, but back in the day, all you had was television. You didn't have the internet. So there was Redskins Report, there was coaches shows, there was all kind of stuff done with the local sports anchor that you would watch every week as a build up to the games. And Sonny was just great on that. Of course, he did the play by play with Frank and Sam. Great player, crazy stat. He still holds the record for most touchdown passes by a Redskins slash Washington football team Commanders quarterback at 31 touchdown passes, and that was done in 14 games. So, and that was in the 60s, middle of the 60s. I don't remember the exact year. So, rest in peace, Sonny. Just wanted to give him a quick shout out and much love. Had to lead with that.
100%. Yeah, all things considered, like all time great. And yeah, the last player to throw for 30 touchdowns still to this day. So we are, yeah, eternally grateful for him and what he's brought to the organization, and definitely sad to see him go. But 91, man,
Good
that's as good of
ride.
a run as any of us can hope for, right? So,
Yeah.
and he spent it pretty well, it seems. So, getting into it, man. Obviously, the biggest news today is that Tressway extension. The biggest news this week is that Tressway extension. The most important special teamer for the Washington Commanders will be returning this year. That is huge news. I mean, am I missing anything, Pop? Is there
I
anything
think we
else
can
that?
wrap the pot up
Yeah, I
now.
guess pretty much it. Pretty
Stay
much it.
tuned.
No.
Stay tuned.
Um, yeah, obviously we're being
Give the
facetious,
people a breakdown here.
being a little facetious here. But the Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl, obviously it's basically old news by the time you're hearing us talk about it. But we can bring
A quick
some more
reaction.
perspective, a couple fun things to talk about. Um, so the Seahawks just knocked the Pats around, man. Took their lunch money and rubbed their face in the dirt by the end of it. It was just a good old fashioned beatdown. I know sometimes over the course of the regular season, Pop didn't like it when I said we got handed a good old fashioned beatdown, but I don't think. Do you have any argument with me, Pop, on
No,
classifying this one as a good old fashioned whooping?
they were the better team from start to finish. We kind of thought that would be the case. We both picked the Hawks, so ended the bottom bets year on a high. The rest of the year was kind of like the Commanders' year, but
Yeah,
we
pretty rough.
won't break down the record. But yeah, I felt like if anything, Seattle was kind of keeping them in it by kicking field goals. But hey, what about that? A head coach that actually takes the points and reads the room and reads the situation of the game, knows his defense is dominating, and doesn't go for it on fourth down all the time. And I think those were smart decisions. You like to see the Hawks create some separation there. Really, if you look at it, the Pats had one good drive. There was that two big passes and a scramble by Drake May. He thought maybe he was going to heat up there. Turned out that mostly it was a stat padding drive. Um, the
What do
next
they
drive,
say about a broken
next drive
clock?
he had a pick six,
Yeah.
so that pretty much ended the game. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
they say a broken clock is right twice a day, and Drake May threw exactly two good passes that entire game. So there you go. It's
pretty much,
tale as
pretty
old as
much.
time. Mike McDonald should have been coach of the year.
No doubt.
He came out and put it all on the table and let you guys know that that was the case. Um, and yeah, basically, and it's no fault to the Patriots because you can only play who's in front of you, right? They didn't twist Bo Nix's ankle. Like, there's only so much you can do. You can
Yeah.
only beat the teams in front of you. They did have some quality wins. They beat the Bills on the road. Um, and overall, a little pause there for me trying to recollect the rest of the quality wins. But overall, they can only play the teams that are in front of them. And what happened was you got a team that, in my opinion, the Pats were like a fringe top 5 team in the NFL. But because of the way the brackets worked out and because of some playoff competition luck, and also because of the fact that the other 4 of those teams were in the NFC, they ended up having to they ended up in the Super Bowl and they showed through 4 quarters of football minus 2 throws that they did not belong there. Long story short, it was a whooping. And but hey, I said Drake May had to have the game of his life. Pop, you want to read off the stats? I mean, I think if you told me these stats before the game, I might say he had the game of his life.
I think it's a phenomenal performance. 295 yards passing and 2 touchdown passes. He did also have 2 interceptions, 6 sacks for 43 yards, but lost yards, and a fumble. So,
One of those was a pick six. And
and
if you
a lot of stat padding in the fourth quarter, of course.
this is why you can't talk about statistics. Because if you just looked
Definitely
at
not in this case.
295 and 2, you'd go, I mean, if you told me that going into the game, I would say, yep, Pats won. But yeah, I said it in the preview. It's very reductionist, but it's also just what it was gonna take. This matchup was a really bad one for New England. It was a really hard, based on the way that what the two teams did well. This was a bad matchup for New England. This was a Super Bowl quality defense. The defense won them the Super Bowl. Darnold just managed the game, and to his credit, didn't throw a pick, didn't turn the ball over, didn't really
Yep,
put the ball
he was
in
solid.
harm's way ever. And to the coaching credit, to what Pop spoke to earlier, they played Mike Vrabel kind of got Mike Vrabel. Like, they almost played the exact same brand of football that the Patriots were playing in the playoffs, right? They played it very conservative. Their defense was aggressive and won them the game. And then offensively, they just took the points when they got the points,
Yeah, but
played
the
field position, and took it
the
easy.
trouble with the Patriots' conservative game plan was Drake May kept giving the ball away
Yeah.
throughout the playoffs,
Yep.
and that was a problem. And you know, definitely a tough playoffs for the young man. Somehow they pulled off 3 wins through that run. But in terms of his performance, it was difficult, and it just goes to show. I mean, I think there's big argument over who should be MVP, and I know it's a regular season award. I'm not sure it should be. That's another whole nother story. But you saw the performance that Matt Stafford was able to put up against that same defense. It was a thing
Three
to watch
times.
at
Three
Seattle.
times, by the way.
So I think you saw the difference between an elite quarterback and someone that's a second year quarterback that's still got a lot of things to learn and fix. Um, and that's the point. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it because you know I look at the quarterback rankings that are coming out now, left and right, center, and Jane Daniels is at the top of a lot of those lists now. And if you would ask people at the end of the regular season because of what Drake May did and Jaden's season, that he didn't perform, but it was the point that we made a couple of pods ago after 2 playoff games where we kind of had it, or we had an equal playing field to compare them from, or even 3 playoff games, quite frankly. You look at the performance that Jaden put on last year compared to what the rookies were able to do this year, or the second year players were able to do this year. It was no comparison. And I think the guys that are doing those lists and making those rankings um, have reevaluated a bit. Now, I think the jury is still out on all these guys, quite honestly, right? Like, I think Drake May, you said it last pod, he's got all the makings of a really good player. but similar to Jaden, similar to Caleb, there's some things that he needs to clean up and figure out. You could argue with Caleb, it's his accuracy. With Jaden, he's got to learn to stay on the field and protect himself better. With Drake, it's protecting that ball, and I mean, he was missing wide open players. I mean, that's the bottom line. The stat was he had the exact same amount of time to throw as Sam Darnold. And if you look at the difference in sacks and turnovers, it's night and day. And so, the great ones have to learn how to be there. Now, hey, Pats fan, if you want to say he's young, he's still developing. He had a great season. Great. That's all fine. That's not what you were saying 3-4 weeks ago. You were calling
No,
him Tom Brady. So, that's, and maybe, and who knew? Maybe this is,
he ain't
this
Tom
is,
Brady. I don't care if he wins 8 Super Bowls. Tom Brady never did that. He ain't Tom Brady. I don't care.
right.
I don't care if he wins 9 Super Bowls. He's not Tom Brady. Let's call a spade here. We've been nice, right? That was one of the worst quarterbacking performances in a Super Bowl I have ever seen.
Playoffs.
Point blank. In the playoffs I've ever seen. I mean, that was as bad as CJ Stroud was 3 weeks ago. As bad. That was horrific. That was terrible. It does not matter. And their defense played great. They held up for as long as they could have.
Yeah, they
It
did.
does not matter what any other of the 52 guys on that field could have done. If that was what Drake May had for the game of his life, they had no chance at winning. No chance. And so that's where, like, Patriots fans, I think you got your guy. I think he's a good player. I would, if you don't have questions about his ability under the lights after this playoff run, because it's not just this game. He didn't just squeeze this game. He was awful the whole run. This game, finally, he couldn't get away with it. But if you don't have questions about your guy's ability under the lights, the same way we have questions about our guy's ability to stay healthy, if you don't have questions about that, you're not being an objective fan. You're just not. That was one of the worst quarterbacking performances. And I know bad quarterbacking performances. I watched this team for 28 years. I know bad quarterbacks. All right. I watched Garrett Gilbert. I convinced myself that Taylor Heineke with the full offseason could be a starter. All right. That was bad quarterbacking. There's no
Yeah, and I
two
mean, you
ways
give a
about
lot of credit to Seattle's defense. We didn't look good against them either
it. No,
earlier
sure
this
didn't.
year. They made a lot of teams look bad, other than the Rams. The Rams seem to be the only team that could do anything against them. So I think the two best teams are in the NFC. And, look, you can only play who's in front of you. Give Pats credit for getting there. It was a great season for them. Good news is, son, you want to hear the best news of all? We're all in first place. We're all
Yeah,
tied
zero
for
zero,
first
baby.
in the
And hey,
2026 season. This is where we thrive. It's the off season, baby. We finally got here.
I got even better news for you. The Philadelphia Eagles are no longer defending champs.
That's that's
Ancient
that's also
history.
good.
Ancient history. Now that fan base is already struggling right now, so they've quieted down on that, thankfully. But ancient history. Ancient
Who did
history.
you want to win more? The um last year, did you want the Chiefs or did you want the Seahawks to win more? Who were you more invested in?
Oh, the Chiefs last year for sure. For sure. Just because of this the sting of losing to the Eagles the way we
There's
lost to the
recency.
Eagles.
There's
Yeah.
recency with the Seahawks,
I
and
really don't like if the Pats came out now. If they won that game the way that May played, I would have been disgusted. But if they came out and balled and won that game, I really
yeah,
wouldn't have cared all that much.
yeah.
It was just if they were going to pull a rabbit out of their hat at the end of that one. But getting
Well, it's
into it,
again, like many people have said, and I'll just we can close it there and get on to Commanders news. You know, um, well, I want to give two things. I want to give a shout out to Kenneth Walker for the MVP. What a great back! He is a free agent. I'm sure he'll stay in Seattle. Seems like such a humble.
yeah,
Yeah, we'd love to
seems like
have
a
him.
great dude.
Seems like such a humble, great kid. I'm sure he'll stay there. Love him as a player. I'd been watching him through the season. Every time I saw him play, I just love that kid. And then, in terms of just the quarterback discussion, jury's still out on all the young guys. And, they could all be really, really great players. The same draft class that had Sam Darnold, you know, had Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, this might be one of those generational draft classes for quarterbacks. And I kind of hope that's the case because it'll be make for great competition. Look, as long as our guy can stay on the field and he shows us what he did last year again, that's all I really care about. Less so than rooting against these other guys, right? Like our guys got
Exactly.
to step up and perform. So
I would
speaking
love
of
to
that,
see
good
our
lead
guy.
in.
Tell you what, after last weekend, I would love to see our guy against Drake May in the Super Bowl. That would be fun, wouldn't it? After
Yeah,
what we
yeah,
saw last weekend, oh, I'd
be
love that.
incredible. And maybe it's
Run it
setting
back.
up for that. Maybe it's
Who
setting up
knows?
for that.
It'd be fun. But yeah, let's
After
talk
he takes on
multiple
Caleb in
commanders.
the championship game, he plays Drake May in the Super Bowl.
We
Be
get a
incredible.
semifinals that's Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I mean, how beautiful would that be?
That's
Sorry, JJ.
awesome.
And hey, you know what? We'll play JJ McCarthy if they want to step up. Well, we could compromise.
Yeah, at home
You know?
with
Yeah,
with being
Penix.
the number one
If
seed.
Falcons could get it going, get Michael Penix in there. Who knows?
All right.
Um, let's move it on here. Um, Getting into it, there's a lot of Commanders news today, so it's a good day for a pod. DQ addressed the media, David Blough addressed the media, Daronte Jones addressed the media. So the new coordinators are in the building. Lots of interesting stuff to get into. Obviously, we already made the joke about the Tressway thing. That's the
Yeah, we
emergency
can.
pod. Enjoy it. But great, sneaky important player. Great to have him back. Hopefully, we get back to not having to use him much next year. Um, so
We got to lead the
overall,
league for talking about the punter.
sure
We
do.
have to
Yeah, love the
by
guy.
far, but love the guy though. Yeah, love him.
What were your overall impressions from the presser pop?
Impressions. I mean, there were some definitely good takeaways, right? I think one thing I was impressed about for both coordinators is just how there wasn't a lot of rah rah. There was just they were very just somebody called David Blau boring. I mean, I don't know. I don't agree with that. I just but I love how they were just talking ball. They're just talking about their approach to things and why they're ready for the challenge. And it was, wasn't a lot of rah rah. We've had the rah rah guys, quite honestly, and not that Cliff wasn't much of a rah rah guy, but we've had guys take a different approach. They just seem like two guys are just all about ball, just all about coaching these guys up and building relationships and getting down to work. And I think it was interesting. There's a lot of interesting pieces of it, but that would be my quick take. Without breaking all of it down as we will do over the next few minutes. But I was impressed from that point of view.
Yeah, me too. I think overall, you don't need more rah rah in the building when you got Dan Quinn. That's kind of his thing.
I thought
Um,
about that
so
earlier. I'm glad you said that.
yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
You need a couple guys that really know ball. So I think Blau and Daronte Jones hopefully are that. Um, still love the I still love both hires, frankly. I think Blau makes a lot of sense. Love the Daronte Jones hire. I'd put Blau at like an 8.5, and I'd put the Daronte Jones hire at like a 10 in terms of what was realistic. Now, could you have gotten Jim Schwartz? Maybe, but I mean, come on, what are you banking on at that point, right? Um, I think
I'm not sure to change
overall,
anything. That might be crazy to say, but
yeah,
I just think that yeah, you can bring one of these veteran guys on, but how long are they going to stick around? I mean, now you got a chance. You got two young guys with someone who's like you said is the rah rah guy, is the leadership guy, and you got to give Dan Quinn so much credit for going in the direction that he went. I think clearly on the offensive side of the ball, he had a vision, that he wanted to, and he said as much. On the defensive side of the ball, he went in a completely different direction.
yeah,
This guy is going to come in with a scheme that's completely different from what we were running, and he's a defensive head coach. How often have you seen a coach do that?
Yeah.
It never happens. And I think it was a really great decision. And you've got to give Dan a lot of credit for doing what he thought was best for the team and not necessarily his ego, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, like he doesn't really have a choice. And there's an interesting Blau quote about that later, but he's got to like if he does go with a guy in his system and it's not working, it's everybody's gone. Like if Quinn has to, if he doesn't hire the best people for the job and he hires with ulterior motives, it's going to cost him his job anyways. So he's got to hire the best people for the job. I think. How often does it happen? I mean, we saw it with the Bills, I guess, right? How often does it happen where a head coach gets fired and then an internal candidate gets promoted? It's very rare. I think more. I think coaches are over paranoid about that. I think it's more likely that if your internal candidate is outperforming you, they're probably going to leave before you have the chance to get fired and replaced by them. I mean, Joe Brady's the first one I can remember in recent memory. I don't know if you remember one, Pop, but
It happens, but it tends to happen like almost, yeah. I mean, it happens on occasion, but it tends to happen because, mid-season or something, right? Because they
yeah,
let somebody go. I mean, I think that the more I think about this, I mean, again, Dan Quinn, as he always does, stayed pretty diplomatic over the "why did you let Cliff go" scenario. Nobody asked much about Joe Witt. Uh,
well, you don't need to ask
uh,
much. Just turn the tape on.
but he basically said, he made it clear he wanted to go in a different direction.
Yep.
And maybe that's his spin on things at this point, but maybe part of that wanting to go on a different direction was sitting down with Cliff and saying, I want to go in a different direction. Are you on board? I want to make these changes. I want to go with a different philosophy. But that was never Cliff.
Yep.
You knew what you were getting with him. And that was some of the frustration I had with this process. But at the same time, I guess you go through it and you learn, right? Um, and so I think that was clear. This was his vision. This is the direction he wanted to go in offensively. I think defensively in the hiring of Daronte Jones, and we'll start getting into more of the specifics about each guy in a minute. Like I think Dan Quinn went through the process and he had a complete different plan in mind. Right? He wanted to get a veteran play caller. He wanted to get someone that fit a bit closer to what his style was, and he bumped into Daronte Jones through the process. And I'm sure he got a good recommendation about him, and he just said, "Whoa, this might be actually what we need," right? And that's great. That's why you do interviews, right? That's why you bring people in. You might have a lead candidate. You might have something you think of is what you want. But then you go through the process and you be thorough and you talk to a bunch of candidates and you come across Daronte Jones. And that's I'm at this point I'm glad he did. And like I
Yeah.
said, much credit to TQ about the process that we was used. I mean, I kind of think with Blough, I just don't think they wanted him to leave the building. And
Yeah.
I think he was the thought from day one. You
Yeah.
know,
I think he was always like, I mean, I said it. You could probably find it on a pod from last going into last year where I said that's the guy that I hope takes Cliff's job eventually, but maybe he'll be too young. And when Cliff
we need
goes
a
to be
Matt
a head coach,
Valdez that can go through all the clips for us, or a landfill.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that ain't either of us.
Not
But
yet.
maybe one of you guys can do it. Um, it's the Blau has always been the guy for me. They've always really liked him. And it seems like, I mean, let's go through some of these quotes here, just a general idea. I mean, obviously he's going to say like he always had aspirations for this job. He's excited. That's what you say at any big first opportunity, right? And he basically said what we're all thinking, right? Which is, and this goes for everybody involved with the Burgundy and Gold currently. This probably goes for Adam Peters. This goes for Pop and I's mental health. As Jaden goes, we all go, right?
Right.
If he can put Jaden in a position to thrive, that has to be every offensive coordinator's priority, but especially, when you've got a guy like a Jared Goff, right? You've got a guy that can manage the game, be special in moments, but not an generational talent type of physical gifts player, right? It's you can have a more balanced approach because then maybe Kirk comes free in free agency, maybe Daniel Jones comes free, you can plug a guy in, right? But when you have a guy like Jaden Daniels, you have to live and die by it, right? And he's
Yeah.
kind of said that, and what I really like, is he said he's quote very convicted about putting Jaden Daniels under center, which I
Yeah, that's
love.
one of the
That's
big
something that
headlines. Yeah.
yeah, something that
Dan
Dan
Quinn
Quinn
emphasized
doubled
that
down
too.
on as well. And I think that's where you said like your theory about the Cliff thing. I think it's spot on. I think he probably sat down with Cliff and said, look, and he sat down with Cliff knowing in the back of his mind that Blough, because he's young and he wants a chance, will be more willing to implement these things. And he has the Ben Johnson experience, all that stuff. He probably sat down with Cliff and said, look, this is more what I want the offense to look like. I know it's not exactly your thing, but we can incorporate a lot of what you do into it. And do I have your trust that you'll stick with this and you will do this? And Cliff probably said no in so many ways. And you can understand that from both perspectives, right? And that's how we landed
Or
here.
it could have been, it ain't working for me, man. And I think I need to make a change
Yeah,
unless you can, because I just wonder the more this time that goes on, I just wonder if him and AP sat down and went, I think it's David Blough. And I think
yeah,
we need to have a chat with Cliff. And we just can't let this kid leave the building because he's going to be able to do what we want done. And asking Cliff to change, even though he might say he's willing to do it, do you really trust that he can and he will? And Cliff, through the
sure don't.
course of all of it, doesn't land a job, right? He's
Yeah,
now going to the Rams. I hate to say it, almost as a consultant and almost intern, and learn a different style of offense. Which credit to him for doing that. And maybe he comes out of that with the extra tools that he needs to, you know, not have such a short shelf life on an offense like his
yeah.
appears to have.
Yep. So maybe the guys that were telling him we need to change some things up ended up being right. Maybe it's a bit of a moment for him. I could care less. But we're moving. We got David Blau now, and I think he also something interesting. And I want to get your take on this one, Pop, because I didn't have the chance to listen. I'm just looking at your highlights here. But he voiced confidence in Bill Krosky Merritt as running back one.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of said, "Look, he's the only one under contract."
Yeah.
So I think he was somewhat, he definitely gave a vote of confidence to Bill, but he also kind of hinted at we need to go get some talent in that room.
Yeah.
Like it's not so much the run it back at running back. I mean, both Daronte and David were very diplomatic, in terms of the talent that's on the team. They both spoke well of the players. I mean, talk about diplomatic. Blough talked highly of the wide receiver room, which right now consists of what,
Yeah.
under contract is not a whole lot beyond Terry, and a couple of younger guys. But I thought, yeah, I thought in terms of just the offensive attack, talked about being under center, talk about having a power run game and focusing more on play action, going to Jaden Daniels' strengths in terms of talent. But it must be said, Jaden Daniels has not played under center very much. So there is a bet that's being placed here that he can adjust to this different style of offense because we talked about it before. One of the things that made him so successful in year one is Cliff definitely adapted. I mean, Cliff's style of offense and the style of offense that Jaden had been playing were a perfect match. And I think, if anything, Cliff kind of leaned into that even more and did more and more of what Jaden's comfortable with. Now, maybe that's not sustainable for the long term. Year two certainly indicated that. But this is going to be a big change for Jaden. I believe he can absolutely, on paper, he's got all that it takes where this will be nothing but a positive change for him. But it's still a change. It still remains to be seen how it all works out.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works out with him. I have I mean, I don't think if there was doubts with AP, uh, Dan Quinn, or Blough, I don't think things go in this direction. I don't think they make such a vehement point about saying they want to do it. I mean, maybe it ends up being a mistake. You don't know. But just really quickly, I Googled the running back free agents just out of curiosity. There are some really good players
Yeah,
available. I mean, Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, Javante Williams, Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Brian Robinson, uh, J.K. Dobbins. Like, there's some good talent
yeah.
that's available. Even like a budget guy like Tyler Algier, Isaiah Pacheco's available. Like,
We're going to be
there's
getting into a lot of that.
a lot of backs.
Free agent talk is incoming. Draft talk is incoming.
Yeah,
But no, I
and
mean, I
backs are
think
cheap to upgrade too. So maybe
yeah,
we don't need to be so fast about running everything back. I didn't think about that. It's interesting.
but I think it's not only in the presser, but what we've heard. Jaden Daniels had some. We haven't even talked about his interviews, and really not on the agenda today. But he talked a bit
Ugh,
about it too, and referenced the fact that Dave Blau is definitely going to change things up, and he's got elements of Brian Johnson, the experience he had
benches.
there, KOC. So those things are exciting to hear. And but what about Daronte Jones? Uh, that I think if anything, it seemed like the consensus among the sports reporters around is that that he was very impressive and they loved what he had to see, kind of like that 8.5 and 10 that you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Now, I just want to remind everybody before we do this, just in the world of journalistic integrity, Joe Witt Jr. won the introductory press conference award too.
This was
That being
different.
said, I hope this one's different. I think
This,
this one's different
well, no, I
based
mean
on
it
his
is
experience and his ability.
the tone of how he presented himself was different.
Yeah.
Not saying there was anything wrong with how Joe Witt presented himself, but the tone of how Daronte presented himself. It was much more to do. Daronte's impressiveness was much more to do about the content of what he said,
Yes. Yeah.
not the way he
And
delivered it. It was
what he
pretty
said
chill, actually.
essentially, to go through the bullet points and one more there's one more specific than the rest, but he's aggressive by nature, and his blitzing and his coveraging decisions are going to be based on personnel. I think you should expect way more zone defense from this defense next year. This was primarily a man defense last year, and then we had to switch to zone because of the personnel we had available. And frankly, Dan Quinn's book on zone is just not deep enough, and we got smoked. So, but I think Daronte Jones coming from the Brian Flores playbook, you're going to see more zone defense, which I'm in favor of. And if you look in Minnesota, they don't have superstar defensive backs. I mean, they have some good players, but they don't have absolute they don't have Pat Surtain. It's the scheme that's making it work there defensively, and so hopefully you're seeing the same thing here. And he did specify that his blitzing and his coverage decisions are going to be based specifically on the personnel that is available to him and on the field. Hopefully, again, at least 8 of those guys are not guys we were saying were on the field last year in the starting 11, or at least the guys that were majority starting 11 last year, but with the injuries. He said his strengths are his ability to connect with people and to teach, and he already has individualized plans for players.
It's
Specifically, one that
impressive.
I like is that he loves Frankie Louvu, and that was my first thought, was that Frankie Louvu in this kind of cross dog, always sending 5, blitzing linebacker kind of scheme could really be a weapon. Um, and I think he's gonna get him back because we zapped him of his powers last year, man. And that had a lot to do with putting him in at defensive end more. His snap
Was the
share
original plan.
and
I don't
were
think
much
he just
higher.
got it.
Um, I think he didn't work out with personnel, but he says he loves Frankie Louvu. He wants him going downhill, and he also likes Jordan McGee's versatility. Which I mean, every time we talk, we're gonna have our friend on the podcast in a bit, and I'm sure he'll bring up Jordan McGee whenever we do have our
Right.
our loyal guest on. I'm sure Jordan McGee will come up. But can Daronte Jones finally be the guy to unlock Jordan McGee and make him our Fred Warner? You know, we need it. We need it. We need an heir apparent to be Wags because I think you might get one more year out of him. I am of the opinion that honestly, unless you're getting a top of the line guy, might be worth getting one more year out of Wagner. I think he took the brunt of the fall last year for like from a PR perspective, and he probably was not nearly as culpable for the problems last year. I think they had much more to do with
Yeah.
the lack of talent around Bobby Wagner than Bobby Wagner specifically. But it'll be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what we do defensively. I think that's kind of like everybody's going to be entranced by the offense. But if we learned anything from the Super Bowl and from these playoffs, right, I think the defense is going to actually be the most exciting headline.
Yeah, some people are making an issue that he called out Will Harris, which I thought was interesting. He called out Javon Kinlaw, but he didn't say anything about Deron Payne or Bobby Wagner. But I just think that's just a matter of he just, you know, I think people can read too much into that stuff. I think he just some names popped into his head. You know, he didn't talk about any of the corners either, right? Or so I
Well,
don't think the fact
you
that he
also
didn't mention a name matters
no,
very
and you
much at
also
this
don't
point.
know. He doesn't know if either of those guys are going to be back next year. Like Durante's in a
Yeah,
weird contract situation, and um, Payne is, and Wagner is only on a 1 year deal, and
right.
gonna
Does he even
like
want to keep
might
playing? Yeah.
retire. You know, like
I'm with you. I mean, I think again we'll get into a lot of the free agent stuff, but I'm with you on Wagner. I think ultimately he does a lot of stuff at a very, very high level, and what he brings from a leadership point of view. The fact that he can't cover, there's a lot of middle linebackers that can't cover. I'm not sure how many middle linebackers in the league, and yeah, he's a step slower than you would like. He's not a sideline to sideline guy. Maybe you need to get him off the field on third downs or obvious passing situations, unless he's rushing a quarterback. But I'd have no issue with bringing Bobby back for sure. And some guys like that have a lot of value as leaders. I know people don't like to hear that, but sometimes they do. So, I mean, yeah, from my point of view, my closing thoughts. I mean, I think nothing I heard today did anything to discourage me, only encouraged me about the situation. And yeah, I give DQ a lot of credit for taking those chances. The rest of the coaching staff starting to take shape. You got guys like Wes Welker who's going to step up into a bigger role. I think the Eric Henderson signing as the new D line coach was pretty big. He's a guy who coached D line for the Rams and an elite defensive line for quite some time. So I think the staff's taking shape, and it's going to be a lot of fun. See what happens in free agency. It opens up. I think it's like March 11th, so it's not a month away, not far.
yeah, we'll see. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm starting my campaign right now. If it's not Bobby Wagner, give me the Italian stallion Matt Milano at linebacker next season. I'm starting my campaign. Unrestricted free agent is still that veteran presence. Probably get him a little bit cheaper. It's Sport Rack has his average annual value lower than Bobby Wagner's. And frankly, I just want him because he's Italian. Is it so bad to say that?
Any chance upgrade any position? No, it's not bad at all. It's always supported on this podcast. But any chance upgrade at any position, they should go for it if it fits within, you know, their overall. It doesn't hurt you from, upgrading in another area that might be a bigger priority. I have no issue with that at all. I mean, there's probably the people that might be still with us might be screaming at their computers or phones or televisions, wherever you're watching us on YouTube, saying, no, no, we got to play, Jordan McGee more. And maybe that's the case. And I'm sure Daronte will figure that out. I think that After a year like we had, maybe Jaden Daniels is the only one that's safe, and maybe Jaden and Terry are the only ones that are safe. But for the
Yeah.
most part, I think there's no evaluation that shouldn't be done, right? And
Yeah.
even if that's in a situation of like I mentioned Terry, well, maybe he drops to wide receiver too. If we can really score big on a wide receiver one, there should be nothing off the table, you know, going into
Agree.
the year.
Agree. Little George Pickens action, little Alec Pierce action. We'll see. Should
You're
get fun.
itching to have that free agent. Maybe that'd be the next
I'm
podcast.
itching.
Free agency talk.
Might have to be. Well, let's wrap this thing up. What do you say, Pop?
Let's wrap it.
All right. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank y'all for another great week and hail to the Commanders.